You want to know what books I have read and that I didn't like. If that's the case, then you're in luck, because in today's video, I'm going to share with you some of the least favorite books I have ever read. When you consume any form of entertainment, whether that be books, movies, music, you're bound to come across something that you just didn't like. Now, this doesn't mean that if I have a book here that was my least favorite book I've read, and if you enjoyed the book, that doesn't mean I'm hating on you. One thing that I hope improves within the book reviewing space over the next year or just in the future is that anytime someone is giving a negative review over a book, people don't take that personally. Now, what I love to be a part of a fandom, and I love to be on like the hype side of a book, but that just isn't the case all of the time. There are some books that have a lot of hype around them, and I read them and I don't love them. That doesn't mean that the book doesn't deserve the hype. That doesn't mean just because I didn't like the book that everyone who liked the book is weird, or that there's something wrong with them, or that the author is a terrible writer and should never write a book. Again, that just means that that book wasn't for me. Line gets blurred and people take offense to negative book reviews, and I just want to say that reading is subjective. This really needs to be ingrained into the book reviewing space. Reading is subjective. A book I love, you may hate. A book you love, I may hate. And even though these books are my least favorite books, if you haven't read them, I'm still going to encourage you to read them because you might love them. What makes a book difficult for me to read is whenever I don't like the characters, if I find any of the characters insufferable or completely unlikable and they're the main characters, it makes me hard to immerse myself into the storyline. Sometimes a particular writing style isn't for me, and I can't always identify what it is particular about the writing style. It's the flow of the book that just doesn't resonate with me, and sometimes it's just the plot. Sometimes I don't care for the plot, and that is completely okay. There are millions of books out there. You're not gonna love every one. I'm sorry. I want to love every book. I want to hype up every book, but that's just not the case. I have books in 3 different genres. I have thriller books, fantasy books, and romance books that are my least favorite reads, and a common theme that you will see amongst these books are what I said earlier, that I just didn't like the character, I couldn't connect with the storyline, so I'll stop yapping. I tend to get carried away in my yap sessions, and we'll start with the thriller genre. I'm just gonna say the Stephen King book, Misery. I have read one other Stephen King book before, which was Mr. Mercedes, purely based off the title. I read it back in like, what was it, 2018? And a fun story, we're gonna get a little sidetracked here. I was in cosmetology school in Charleston, South Carolina, the Paul Mitchell School of Charleston, when the movie was being filmed, or the TV show was being filmed in Charleston, and I remember this experience so vividly in my head. Now, my name is Mercedes. When I tell people this, I usually get some kind of reaction, and it's usually some sort of car joke, or people are like blown away that my name is Mercedes. Now, I had a client this particular day, and I go up to the person, I'm like, hi, my name is Mercedes, I'm gonna be doing your hair today. And she literally, I'm not even joking. Okay, let me start over. This is gonna be the interaction. Okay. Hi, my name is Mercedes, I'll be doing your hair today. Shut the fuck up. I'm sorry? What's actually funny about this is the person who I was doing their hair was one of the producers on Mr. Mercedes. She was like, I just can't escape the filming of this. And I was like, I'm sorry, you can call me Sadie. Back to Misery by Stephen King. I don't know if Stephen King is for me. I really liked Mr. Mercedes when I read it, but Misery just seems completely different. And when I tell you that I did not care, I did not care. I tried to read the book physically, and then I was like, oh God, no, no. And then I tried to switch to audio, and that made it worse. I think it's the way that the story was flowing. The way that this book was written was not for me. This was a DNF because I just caught myself when I was listening to the audiobook, like having to rewind, not fully paying attention, not caring about the characters, not caring if they live or died. I did not care. And if I catch myself not caring in a book, that means that the book needs to be DNF. Next book is another DNF, another book that I wanted to love because this is a popular author and everyone says that you need to read a Grady Hendrix book. So I tried to read How to Sell a Haunted House. This is the first and only Grady Hendrix book I have read. Maybe I need to read more of his books. But in this book, I found the characters to be insufferable, and the only redeeming character was the sister, but then she had like this weird character change like halfway through that I was like, girl, why? I don't like you anymore, and you were the only reason I was continuing to read this book, and now I hate you, and now I don't want to read this book anymore. And also, this is a thriller book, and I felt like there was no thriller happening, and like once I get to like this point in the book, if there's no thriller happening, I don't want it. And maybe it's because the suspense aspect that's happening in this book revolves around dolls, and I don't necessarily find dolls creepy. I mean, there are dolls like Annabelle that are terrifying, but in this sense, I didn't find the dolls to be like haunting at all. What I really wanted to do was line up all the characters and just all of them. And I felt like maybe that would whip them into shape. And I feel like I could be friends with all of the dolls that were in this haunted house. And yeah, I ultimately DNF'd this book. The next, I have two books, which are by the same author, which is Frida McFadden. I'll start with The Housemaid is Watching. Now, I went into this book wondering why the fuck it existed. And maybe that's a bad place to go into a book. This is the third book in the Housemaid series, and I was wondering why. Why is there a third book in this series? So why is this a trilogy? And then I ended this book, and it made me really dislike Frida McFadden. I had the novella that follows this series. I would be including that as well. Why the fuck is there a novella? Why is there a novella about their wedding? It made no sense. It's purely there to sell books. And if I feel like a publisher or an author is just trying to put something out so they can sell books, it does slightly rub me the wrong way. But I am in a toxic relationship with Frida McFadden because I read this book, hated it, and I was like, is that truly the end? Is that really the end? I don't know. She came out with another book, The Boyfriend. And this was a rage read for me. The thing about Frida McFadden is she's so bingeable. Like she's a popcorn thriller author for a reason. She knows how to like suck you in and make you wonder what's going to happen. But the way that her books are just full of unreliable narrators. I like my thriller books to have like a little bit of sense to them. I like to be able to read and guess a little bit what's happening. I like the ending to reflect in the plot just a little bit. Yeah, this was the end of my relationship with Frida McFadden. I do have some books that I absolutely love by her, like the first Housemaid book, absolutely phenomenal, and Never Lie, one of my favorite Frida McFadden books. But at this point, I dislike more Frida McFadden books than I do like any of her books. So, moving on to the next. Have You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. This is the one and only Geneva Rose book I have read, and I do have other of her books on my shelves that I do want to read. This book in particular kind of ties into what I was saying with Frida McFadden. It's just a completely unreliable narrator, and the ending of this book ruined it for me. When I was reading it, I was there. I was in it. I was like, oh my god, what's happening? What's happening? And then the end happened and everything went up in flames, and I was like, I wasted hours of my life reading this book. But I initially described what the ending felt like is like the author of this book had a bowl of random endings and she just picked one and like wrote that at the end. It just felt completely out of left field. It left like so many loose ends and like plot holes, and it wasn't for me. That is all of the thriller books that I have. The next genre I'll move on to is romance. I'm gonna start off with like the most obvious. If you follow me over on TikTok, you will know that this is, I cannot get down with this book, and that is Credence by Penelope Douglas. This is a taboo romance, and I have to be completely honest, completely transparent. I don't love taboo romances most of the time. Really high percentage that I'm not gonna like a taboo romance. I still do sometimes read them on the off chance that that will be the one taboo romance that I enjoy, but majority of them I don't like. This is one of them. You either love this book or you hate this book, but there is one storyline that if it was completely removed from the plot, I probably would have enjoyed this book a lot more. And that is 100% the Uncle Jake storyline. If you're looking at this book and you're like, oh my god, why are those pages crumbled up? And it looks like these pages were like ripped out and taped back in. That is the Uncle Jake storyline. Especially because she was 17. Especially because she called him Uncle Jake. Especially because she told this man, this grown-ass, middle-aged man, to think of her, 17 years old, as his deceased ex-wife. What? She wanted him to think of her while they were doing it as his dead wife. If it wasn't your Uncle Jake, if we like remove the Uncle Jake out of the situation, and if any woman was to say that to a man, think of me like your dead wife when you were doing it. I've read this book twice. The first time I DNF'd it at this point, the Uncle Jake shit. And then I was like, okay, let me give it another chance. Let me finish it. And I read it and finished it. If the Uncle Jake storyline was removed, I'd feel differently about it. But because it exists in this book, I can't get down with it. If you love Credence, I'm not shitting on you at all. I've had a lot of conversations with people who love Credence, and I get it. Like, I've had people break down why they appreciate that particular storyline, and I hear you, heard, got it. For me, I can't do it. Next book is actually the second book in a trilogy, and that is So Not Meant to Be by Megan Quinn. The first ever Megan Quinn I read was Not So Meet Cute. Absolutely loved it. Gave it 5 stars. I ate it up, and I was like, oh my god, this book is a part of a trilogy, the Kane Brothers trilogy. I immediately went and bought the other 2 books in the series along with like 2 other Megan Quinn books, and I read this book next. Kelsey is the main female character in this book, and she, in my eyes, was just a bitch to the main male character. For what reason? I did DNF this book. I think I DNF'd it around 100 pages, and that is because of just how unlikable Kelsey was. I'm sure if I kept reading, we would understand why she doesn't like JP and why she was treating him so badly, but this wasn't enemies to lovers in my mind. This was the main female character is just angry. I did read the 3rd book in the series, A Long Time Coming. I love that one. Thought it was super cute. I've read other Megan Quinn books. I love Megan Quinn. It's just this book in particular wasn't for me at all. The next book was recommended for me that if I wanted a book to make me cry, read this book. And that is The Fabric of Our Souls by K.M. Moronova. There are some things that I like about this book, but there are a lot of things that I didn't like about this book. Now let me just say that I feel like if this book was another 100 pages, I would have liked it a lot more. Beginning starts off strong and I liked where it was going, but then it like transitions into something so incredibly fast paced that it like took me out of the storyline of how things were happening. And I wish that there was a little bit more space for a little bit more depth to the characters and a little bit more room for more suspense or like more build up to the shit that was happening in this book. There's a friendship in this book that consists of 3 people, and these 3 people like banded together and they were like, we're gonna burn the world down together, we'll conquer the world. But in my eyes, their relationship was very surface level, and they go through a lot of stuff together, but they never dive into like the depths of their characters together. And then when like tragedy strikes, it didn't strike me. Now, people love this book, rightfully so. The writing is beautiful. I just didn't connect in the way that I wanted to. The next book was actually recommended to me by my sister. Now, my sister and I have discovered that we have different taste in books, but we still like try to see eye to eye. Anytime I read a book and I'm like, this book is the shit, I run and tell my sister, I'm like, you have to read this book. She reads it, she hates it. Same thing with her. If she reads a book, she loves it. She tells me, you gotta read it. And I usually don't like it. One of those books was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. My sister absolutely loves this book. And I was like, oh my god, I gotta see what this book is about. I didn't care. I didn't care about Evelyn Hugo. I found her to be pretentious, and I think that like is part of her character. She's like this rich dying lady. Like, of course she has the right to be pretentious. She picks this random person to tell her life story. There is a reason for that. But I didn't care about Evelyn Hugo and all her dead husbands. I didn't care. Just dragging through it. Like, can we get to the point? Can we get to the point, please? And then we got to the point and I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, sure. There are a few books that me and my sister do see eye to eye on. Like, I think Say You Swear was a 5-star read, and my sister also thinks Say You Swear was a 5-star read. Same thing with Kristen Hanna books. We both love Kristen Hanna books. It's just fun to see if my sister's going to love a book and then how I'm going to feel about it. So I have like my own little book club with just me and my sister, and it's so fun. Oh, okay. That looks like that was all the romance books. Now we have fantasy. I have 4 fantasy books, and they're actually all part of a series. They're either the second or third book in a series. Start with Vow of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. Now, I went into this book already feeling lackluster from Dance of Thieves. Okay? This was another book my sister told me to read, and she said it gets better in book 2. So I was like already not really vibing in the first book. This is just a duology, Dance of Thieves, Vow of Thieves. And I was like, okay, but it gets better in the second book. Let me get to the second book. And I got here, and I wish I would have stopped. Now, I did discover that there is a series that comes before the duology, which is the Remnant Chronicles, that a lot of people say if you read that first, then you'll enjoy Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves more. I didn't do that. I didn't know that series existed. And I just, my main complaint, I just was disconnected from the characters, and I didn't care. And that's really all I can say about this book. The next book, however, I have a lot of things to say about, and it's the third and final book in a trilogy, and that is A Curse for True Love. Now let me tell you, I fucking loved The Ballad of Never After. I have Jax and Evangeline back here. I loved The Ballad of Never After. I ate that book up, and I was so excited to get A Curse for True Love. Biggest disappointment in this book is that I felt like Jack's character was just completely different, and we didn't even get a lot of him within this book because of everything that was happening with Apollo, which, you know what, whatever, we hate Apollo, but if I understand why Apollo was a part of this book, but can we get some more Jacks? And this book is the shortest book in the series, while also having a new plot line, like just shoved, absolutely crammed in there, that it's like, wow, this is the last book. Why are all of these things happening? I feel like we need a little bit more time. Can we slow down? We need a little bit more time. And then like you keep turning the page, time's running out, and then it ends. And you're like, what the fuck? The fuck? This is it? This is all there is. And then it's over. I feel like I could write an essay about this book, but I'm gonna move on to the next book where I feel equally as passionate about as I do with A Curse for True Love. A House of Flame and Shadow, the third Crescent City book. Let me first start out by saying I fucking hate when publishers will have exclusive editions for each bookstore, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, wherever the fuck else, Amazon. And the only difference is the epilogue. Are you kidding me? You're gonna have 6 different epilogues for one book, and the only difference is the epilogue? That should be illegal. That should be banned. Can we banish that out of the book community, please? Putting that aside, let's talk about the book and how I absolutely started to hate the main female character in this book, which was Bryce. The way I feel like she did like a 180 from the first 2 books was criminal. And the way that I hated the love interest between Bryce and Hunt. And the fact that she was treating Hunt like he was like a piece of doo-doo. Be a man, Hunt, be a man. Girl, you traumatized this man. This man had PTSD from a past relationship, and he was telling you the whole time, hey, honey boo Bryce, I don't want to go through this again. I feel like what we're doing, we're leading up to doing what I did last time, and I don't want to do that. Please, can we just slow down here? And she was like, nah. And when they got reunited, she was just like, sup, how you doing? And I just, I did not like their relationship. And I also didn't like how Bryce randomly just declared herself queen, especially with the first 2 books in the series where she's like, nah, I don't want to be queen. I don't want to be queen. Actually, call me queen. I am the queen. I didn't like that. And don't even fucking get me started on the weird sci-fi battle that happens at the end of the book. Don't even get me started, girl. I only have 1 more book left and then I'll shut the hell up. And this is the 2nd book in a series. It's actually part of a trilogy, or I thought it was going to be a trilogy. I thought it was going to be a duology, and then it became a trilogy, and now it's actually a 5-book series. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but that is Nightbane by Alex Astor. I have not read Skyshade, and I actually have no calling to read Skyshade because I didn't like Nightbane. I didn't like the weird love triangle that was happening. Now, my opinions about a love triangle is they can be a little finicky. They can be a little hard to get right. And most of the time, I'm probably not gonna love a love triangle. There have been some that I like. But with this one, I just felt like it was so unnecessary. And from what I understand about Skyshade is that the love triangle was just so off the charts. And what I don't like about this series in particular is, like I said, I thought it was going to be a duology. So I went into Nightbane thinking this was going to be it, and then it leaves off on a cliffhanger, and then we find out that it's actually going to be a trilogy. And then Skyshade comes out and it's actually not a trilogy. There's going to be 5 books in the series. And I am confused. With the way that has been marketed, I feel like reflects in the story, where it's like we don't really know where we're going. We're just kind of gonna like drag it out and like write more books, and we don't really know how many books there's gonna be, but maybe there's gonna be 5. We have to leave enough plot room for 5 books, and it wasn't for me. Let me remind you that this is nothing personal to the authors. It's nothing personal to the fandom of people who loved any of these particular books. I'm not saying you're weird. I'm not shit-talking you. I'm giving you my opinion, and that's all it is, an opinion. Most of these authors are really good, funny, creative people, and just because I didn't like the book doesn't mean I have anything against them or that I wish them ill will. I really hate that I feel like I have to defend myself in saying like, I don't like this book, but you know, it's okay if you do. Like, I wish that there will be a shift in the book reviewing space where it can be a little bit more safe for people to give a negative review and not receive some sort of like big backlash from a fandom. I love to be a part of a fandom, but it can get a little toxic with people feeling like they have to defend the book when they hear someone who doesn't like it. Prefer to absolutely shit on a book and rip it apart, dissect everything about the plot and put that out as your review. That is your prerogative, and there are people who appreciate those kind of reviews. Those types of reviews hurt sometimes when you love the book, yes, but it's also so very easy to just do that. Just be like, oh, damn, that sucks. It's so easy. And then it's gone. It's gone. And you allow the people to connect over, you know, their negative review or their negative perception over the book. You allow that to be for the people who it's there for. If it's not for you, girl, you don't have to get involved. You don't have to. I feel like I'm getting a little yappy. I tend to do that. I would love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments below if you agree with any of my opinions over any of these books, or maybe you disagree. If you disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. That's all that I have for you guys today. Until next time, okay, bye. Love you.